They always said the wall went up overnight. That's true. But no one ever talks about what we buried underneath it. Berlin in '61 wasn't just split in two. It was a stage set for ghosts. Some carried rifles, others carried secrets. I carried both. And every time I passed a checkpoint with forged papers and a half smile, I told myself I was on the right side. Whatever that meant. People like to believe escape was noble, clean, but the truth? A tunnel stank of rust and urine, of fear, and sometimes of betrayal. I supervised one of them, beneath Bernauer Strage. We called it Passage Echo, 12 crossings before it turned into a graveyard. I never told anyone why we sealed it. Not my handler, not my wife, not the shrink they assigned afterward. Maybe because I still don't know whose side I was on that night. You wouldn't believe me if I told you what I found down there. Hell, I barely believe it myself. But it's time. Before I regret saying any of this, hit that like button, subscribe. If this is already making you uncomfortable, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and what time it is. I like knowing where in the world people still dare to listen to secrets like these. The first time I stepped into that tunnel, I wasn't thinking about freedom. I was thinking about mold. The stench of damp earth and diesel hung thick in the air. Someone had wired a row of flickering bulbs down the corridor, their yellow glow barely slicing through the darkness. My boots sank into the soft clay as I moved, ducking under low beams, listening to the hum of silence that only places like this know. They had told me it was a humanitarian mission, that it was about helping people escape tyranny. But when I saw the structural plans meticulously hand-drawn, with annotations in 3 languages, I knew this wasn't just a volunteer project. This was funded, protected, and dangerous. I'd seen cleaner bunkers in Korea. This thing looked like it could collapse if you breathed too hard. And yet, every brick whispered a promise. This way out. I was there to supervise logistics, manage the flow. But as I traced the chalk markings on the support beams, I realized something else. This wasn't just a tunnel for others. It was a lifeline for us too. For our cover, for our leverage. For something we hadn't been told yet. 2 diggers were still down there, at night, young guys from Leipzig, both with calloused hands and hollow eyes. One handed me a cigarette, unfiltered. I lit it, coughed like hell, and stared at the freshly reinforced segment leading toward the eastern sewer line. That's where it would break through. That's where lives would change. Or end. I asked the lead engineer, a gaunt man they called K, if it would hold. He shrugged. Until it doesn't, he said. Then he returned to hammering a support beam with the casual rhythm of someone who had nothing left to lose. By midnight, I was alone. Everyone else had retreated back to the safe house. I stayed, pacing the length of the tunnel like a rat in a pipe. There was something in the acoustics that didn't sit right with me. Every step echoed back a half-second too late. Like the tunnel was answering me. At first, I thought it was paranoia. Berlin could do that to you. But then I stopped dead. Center beneath Bernauer Strage and listened. There it was. A faint metallic scrape, like someone dragging a can across concrete. Not from the west, from the east. I turned off my flashlight. Waited. Breath through my teeth. Nothing. Just the G. Trickle of water running somewhere deep in the walls, and the pulse in my ears. But that echo. It wasn't mine. The next morning, I reported the sound. My contact, R, laughed it off. Tunnels moan. It's the weight of the city above them, he said, sipping coffee like it was just another Tuesday. But I saw the way his knuckles whitened around the cup. He knew something. He always did. Later that week, a delivery arrived at the safe house. Steel supports, new floodlights, and a locked black case with no paperwork. I wasn't on the manifest. Neither was R, but the case had my name on it. Just 3 letters. Ton. Inside, there was only a spare radio and a strip of tape with a phrase in German. I want hurt. Might. The wall listens. That was the moment I realized we weren't just digging under East Berlin. We were being listened to from both sides. And maybe, just maybe, we weren't the only ones trying to open that tunnel. The 12th crossing was never supposed to happen. We were already stretching our luck after the 6th. Every run increased the risk of discovery, collapse, or betrayal. But the demand kept growing. More families, more names scribbled onto cigarette papers and matchboxes, more desperate knocks on unmarked doors asking if tonight was the night. Evening, the air in the tunnel was heavier than usual. Not just the humidity, something else. Like the tunnel itself was bracing for what was coming. We'd reinforced the eastern breach, tightened the entry points, set trip lines with broken glass to catch unwanted movement. Still, nothing felt secure. It never did. The first to cross that night was a boy. Couldn't have been more than 10. His mother carried a violin case, which we knew to leave unopened. The signal was in the shoelaces double-knotted, left over right, a code we'd only recently adopted. She didn't say a word. No one did. That was part of the protocol. Silence until sunlight. I watched their silhouettes vanish into the glow of the safe house exit, one after the other, moving like shadows through a memory. Each footstep was a decision. Each breath a coin toss. And with every crossing, the wall seemed to lean in closer. Number 12 was different. A man and a woman arrived together, though their papers said they were unrelated. He was sweating before he even descended the ladder. She kept her face hidden under a scarf, red and gray. I recognized the scarf, not from real life, but from a surveillance photo we'd intercepted months prior. A file tagged Res H4 Avis. The woman's face had been circled in red ink. The name had been blacked out. I wanted to stop the operation, pull them back. But I didn't, because stopping a crossing without proof was worse than letting it fail. That was the logic of the job. Calculate risks you don't understand, then live with the results. As they reached the midway point, the lights flickered. Just once, a flicker like a blink, quick and forgettable. But in the tunnel, nothing is forgettable. I reached for the emergency radio and switched it to passive channel 4. Nothing. Static. Channel 5 feedback, like someone dragging a fork across glass. Then silence again. They made it across. No alarm. No misstep. But when I climbed back into the safe house, R was waiting. He didn't ask about the others. Only said, "This tunnel has 3 more runs in it. After that, it's over." I asked why. He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a small sealed pouch. Inside, a film reel, unmarked, just a white sticker with today's date. "Watch it." "But not here," he said, and vanished into the snow. I never watched that reel. Not then, not ever, because that night, as I lay awake on the cot above the tunnel, I heard something beneath me. Not digging, not water, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, going the wrong way, back toward the east. She appeared just after dusk, wrapped in a gray coat that blended into the wall like camouflage. I wouldn't have noticed her if it weren't for the red briefcase, too clean, too loud for a tunnel that thrived on silence. She didn't speak as she climbed down the ladder. Her hands were bare despite the cold. The others gave her space. They always could sense when someone didn't belong. My instinct told me to stop her. The shape of her shoulders, the way she didn't look down as she walked, like she knew exactly where each support beam sat. It wasn't arrogance. It was familiarity. Like someone returning to a place they'd helped design. She handed me her forged ID, Helena Voss. I'd heard that name before, but I didn't place it. Not until later, when I reviewed the old intelligence files back at the safe house. That same face slightly younger stared back at me in black and white, tagged with a Soviet classification code I'd only seen once, ZOK5, suspected collaborator, counter-intel specialist, presumed dead. I should have stopped the crossing. I didn't. She moved with the rest, but slower, as if memorizing every meter of the tunnel as she passed. She glanced at the tripwires, the hidden microphones, the chalk X's on the wall, and nodded, almost imperceptibly, like someone ticking off a checklist in her mind. I trailed behind, just far enough to avoid suspicion, close enough to intervene if she veered. At one point, her fingers grazed the wall right where the listening wires ran behind the brick. She didn't flinch, didn't look surprised, just kept walking. The red briefcase never left her side. When she reached the halfway checkpoint, she paused, turned, and said something I hadn't heard in years. "Wie viel mail noche? How many times more?" Then she smiled, soft, cold, like someone who already knew the answer. I didn't respond. I just waved her forward back in the safe house. I couldn't sit still. I tore through the old files until I found it her dossier. Pages had been removed, photos cropped. Someone had gone through it long before me. But one note remained, handwritten in English, faded at the corner of a carbon copy. "If she surfaces, tunnel's compromised. Shut it down immediately." Dated 3 months ago. Signed only with initials. DR. I grabbed the radio. Called R. No answer. Tried Langley's emergency relay. No acknowledgement. The silence was louder than anything in that tunnel. I returned to the access point, flashlight in hand, expecting it to be empty. But there she was, still inside, just standing in the dark, alone. Lost something? I asked, stupidly. She tilted her head. "No, I'm just listening." "To what?" "To the parts that don't echo." She turned and disappeared into the eastern shaft before I could follow. I never saw her emerge, but 2 nights later, the French liaison, the one assigned to monitor Soviet leaks, showed up at my door with a bottle of schnapps and a warning. "You let her pass?" I didn't answer. "She's not who you think she is," he said. Then he handed me a Polaroid. Her, smiling, sitting next to someone I knew wasn't supposed to be alive. The message came folded in half and slipped beneath my apartment door like a lost prayer. No markings, no return address. Just 5 words written in slanted German. Nicht vom Außen ... von innen. Not from the east, from within. I stared at it for minutes. The handwriting was familiar, but not quite. Like someone trying to mimic their old self. I didn't show it to, or I didn't log it either. By then, I had stopped trusting paper trails. That night, I returned to the tunnel alone. The air was still, no movement. Just the stale scent of wet clay and carbon from the lamps. I knelt near the central shaft and placed my ear to the ground, not because I expected to hear anything, but because the note had made me feel watched. And I heard it. A voice, faint, not a whisper. More like a recording played too slow. Words stretching through layers of dirt and steel. I couldn't make out the language, but the rhythm was deliberate. Intentional. It wasn't coming from the eastern end. It was bleeding out from the center of the tunnel itself, where we had buried an old listening device months ago. One we were told had gone dead. I pried the panel open. The transmitter was active. Someone had bypassed the battery and rerouted power from the floodlight cable. I pulled the wire. Sparks jumped. The hum stopped. But that silence felt like a scream. I went straight to the observation room and pulled the surveillance tapes for the last 48 hours. Nothing unusual until 3:26 the previous night. A flicker of movement, then static. When the feed resumed, the camera had shifted. Someone had tilted it just slightly, away from the eastern path, and toward the center that someone who knew weren't watching. The middle .r arrived an hour later, demanding to know why I'd pulled the tapes. I handed him the note. He read it. Didn't flinch. Could be disinformation. No Soviet ink. No acid paper, I said. Came from someone who's been inside. He shrugged. Then maybe your tunnel's haunted. That's when I knew he was lying. We'd both been briefed about compromised infrastructure. The Soviets had tried to infiltrate tunnels before, but never from within. We were the only ones with access, codes, and schedules, which meant if someone had planted that device, they were either still inside or had never truly left. Later that week, a package arrived at the safe house. Inside, an old field recorder, German make, with a strip of magnetic tape, unspooled but intact. I fed it through the reel dash to dash reel dot. The first 20 seconds were blank. Then I heard the voice again, that same pattern, same cadence, but clearer now. Der Boden spricht. The ground speaks. I stopped the tape, stared at the machine like it had just bled dot because I knew that phrase. It was part of an old counterintelligence doctrine used in compromised zones. A phrase meant to activate sleeper assets. Someone had turned our escape route into a channel, not to flee, but to send signals. From inside our own lines, it happened just before dawn. I was running inventory in the safe house when the knock came 3. Short, 1 long, not part of our protocol. I opened the hatch anyway. Some mistakes you only realize later. He stumbled in, panting like a hunted animal, mud up to his knees. Civilian coat, military boots, blood on his collar. I didn't recognize him at first. His hair was longer, face thinner, and his voice cracked when he tried to speak. But then he reached into his coat and pulled out a diplomatic pouch, sealed, black, with the Western crest. That's when I saw the initials stitched onto the inside of his lapel. MK, I knew those letters. He was ours, or had been 2 months prior. We'd lost Agent Markham Burned during an intercepted op in Leipzig. Official word was presumed captured, likely dead. Yet here he was, crawling back into our tunnel from the east, not with intel, not with names, but with a pouch we had no record of ever sending. I didn't ask questions. Not yet. I took him down into the tunnel, into the chamber we used for temporary holds, gave him water. He wouldn't let go of the pouch. East is cleaner, he mumbled. Cleaner than this. Then he passed out. I radioed R. You're sure it's him? He asked. Positive. Is the pouch intact? Yes. Good. Do not open it. Do not process him. I'm coming now. But he didn't come. Nobody did. 3 hours passed. I finally opened the pouch. Inside. A set of blueprints. But not of the tunnel. Of something beneath it. A parallel structure. Same dimensions. Different markings. Marked only with code. Mirror line A. I turned to Markham. He was gone. Vanished. I ran the tunnel. Called his name. Nothing. Only his coat remained. And a single Polaroid left inside the pouch, blurry, underexposed, showing what looked like a second ladder leading into darkness. From the eastern side, that evening, Langley scrubbed the logs. Markham's name vanished from the system, and a new file appeared under unauthorized personnel breach. I wasn't listed as witness. The pouch was collected by a courier with no badge. No ID. Later, I asked R what happened. Markham defected. End of story. But he came back. R looked at me like I'd said something absurd. Double quotes, no, he didn't. That's when I stopped asking questions. Because sometimes the story isn't whether someone escaped. It's whether they ever intended to come back. The tunnel always gave warnings. if you knew how to listen. That night, it was the silence that screamed. We were prepping for the next. Run group of 6 mostly older couples and 1 teenager with polio. I remember the boy's crutches clinking on the ladder as he descended. Brave kid. Eyes too calm for his age. 20 minutes into the crossing, our forward contact sent the all clear. The usual code. Schwarzbrot ist frisch. Black bread is fresh. We began moving them, 1 by 1. 10 meters from the exit. The lights cut. Hard. No flicker. No warning. Just total black. We had backup torches. I grabbed mine, flicked it on. That's when I heard it. 3 pops. Not loud, but distinct, suppressed. I pushed forward, yelling for the others to retreat, but the tunnel seemed to twist on itself walls, bending in memory, not space. I slipped, fell onto the track, and tasted blood in the back of my throat. I crawled forward, dragging the torchlight across the mud. Then I saw it. The boy's crutch. Snapped in 2. 1 boot lying beside it. No body. Just shadows. By the time we regrouped at the chamber, only 3 of the 6 had returned. The boy wasn't among them. Neither was the older man who'd offered him help. R arrived 20 minutes later, his face white. No anger, no panic, just resignation. He didn't ask what happened. He told me. They knew. Knew what? Where? We'd be. When we'd move. That's not guesswork. That's access. I checked the trip lines, still intact. The breach had come from inside. I swept the tunnel alone, my torch tracing footprints. They shouldn't have been there. Heavy boots too. Wide for any of our evacuees. I followed them to the bypass chamber near shaft 4. There, on the wall, someone had scratched a message into the clay. Der Anderweg ist offen. The other way is open. It wasn't our phrase. Back at the safe house, I opened the nights. Logbook. Page torn. Timing altered. Whoever had led the last 3 into the breach had overwritten the plan deliberately. 2 nights later, a shipment of cement bags arrived, unscheduled, no signature, marked for maintenance. But we hadn't requested any. I asked R if we were sealing the breach. He didn't answer. He just looked at the torch in my hand and said, "Burn the logs." We never spoke of that night again, but sometimes I wake up hearing the boy's crutch, snapping in the dark, and wonder if he ever made it to the other side. We called him Victor, though that wasn't his name. Nobody knew exactly where he came from, just that he showed up one morning at the safe house with a grease-stained satchel, credentials in Russian and English, and an accent that danced between both. Said he was a defector. Claimed he built tunnels for the Soviets, then switched sides. R didn't trust him. Neither did I, but when he unrolled those maps on the table, we stopped doubting. His blueprints were unlike anything we'd seen, precision down to the centimeter. Airflow correction mechanisms, drainage angles, soil density data by block. And the real kicker? His diagrams matched undocumented voids beneath the east. Utility shafts that didn't exist on our records, but clearly had access points leading directly into Soviet housing zones. He's not guessing, I said. He's been there. We brought him into the operation, quietly. He never touched a shovel. Just walked the tunnel at night, muttering to himself, marking walls with chalk symbols, arrows, letters, dates. Once I asked what they meant. There. Not warnings, he replied. They're memories. He stopped speaking entirely after that. Then, one night, he vanished. No one saw him leave. His bed was made. His maps were gone, but one page remained, pinned to the inside of the tunnel at the northern shaft. A hand-drawn sketch of an access point we had never used. One that would bypass all Soviet patrol paths. We sent 2 scouts to investigate. They never returned. R blamed the terrain. Maybe it collapsed. But I found Victor's chalk marks 5 meters past the last beam, still fresh. 2 weeks later, a local contact from Friedrichshain passed me a sealed envelope during a silent handoff. Inside, a photo of Victor, dead or drugged, slumped in a chair, beside a man in uniform whose face had been scratched out with something sharp. In the corner of the photo, a Soviet officer's insignia. Not surprising, but what shook me was the table in front of them. Our maps. Not copies. Originals. Stolen. From the safe house, I brought the photo to R. He burned it without a word. We reinforced the tunnel's exit, changed codes, cut all civilian crossings for a week. But that didn't change the feeling that Victor hadn't been taken. He'd made a choice, one we didn't see coming, one we still don't understand. And in the silence that followed his disappearance, I started noticing something else. The chalk marks continued to appear. Same symbols, same pattern, but no one was writing them. Not anyone we knew. The camera was a last-minute addition. We'd rigged it up at checkpoint 3, halfway through the tunnel after the ambush. Just a small motion-activated lens embedded behind a vent. Great. It wasn't military grade, but it was enough to catch movement in the dark. Or so we thought. The first nights, we got nothing, just rats, shifting shadows, the occasional drip of water onto the lens. Then came the fourth night. R called me into the observation room without a word. Just pointed at the reel, paused at timestamp 2:41. There, in the middle of the frame, stood a figure. Not crossing, not lost. Waiting. They wore a hood. Thick fabric. Masked face. Stood upright, motionless, as if they'd walked in knowing exactly where the camera was. What set my nerves off wasn't the stillness. It was the insignia, barely visible, sewn into the left shoulder, a small embroidered patch, with the tricolor bars of the French flag. French intelligence had no business inside our corridor. Not without coordination, not like this. R leaned in. Freeze it there. We zoomed in. The patch was real. The figure turned their head slowly toward the camera, but didn't flinch. Then, without warning, they lifted a hand and held up 3 fingers, a signal, a countdown. Then they turned and vanished into the dark. The footage ended. We checked all logs. No French liaison on record that week. No exchange protocols. The embassy denied any involvement. Fabrication, they called it. Impossible. But the patch wasn't the only thing that bothered me. On the table beside the camera reel, someone had left a folded napkin from a French cafe on the western side. Written in pencil across it, the silence est aussi une arme. Silence is also a weapon. No one admitted to leaving it there. That same night, I found a tear in the tunnel's insulation, right where the figure had been standing. Someone had cut into the wall and removed a segment of cable clean, surgical. The kind of work you only see from trained hands. When I reported it, R didn't look surprised. He just said, maybe we're all playing each other. And then he handed me a sealed envelope marked for eyes only. Inside, a copy of the same surveillance still, the figure in the hood. But this version had no patch. The image had been altered, or someone had made 2 versions, one for me, one for someone else. Why 2 versions? I asked. R just smiled, and that's when I realized the enemy wasn't the one in the mask. It was the one holding the negatives. 4 quick taps, then silence, not protocol. I opened the safe house hatch anyway. A courier I'd never seen before stood there, young, clean, eyes too alert for that hour. He didn't speak, just handed me a manila envelope marked with the old clearance code. Mid-shift black. Last time I'd seen that tag, it was during the Vienna broadcast disruption. A. Go stop. No records. Inside, a single type sheet. Cease all operations. Immediate closure of corridor Echo. Begin sealed procedure before 0600. No debrief. No further contact. No explanation. No signature. Just a timestamp dated 2 days prior. I called R.deadline. Tried the back channel. Relay.static. I was alone with an order I didn't believe and followed anyway. By 4 o'clock. I was at the tunnel. No civilians scheduled. No agents inside. Or so I thought. The lights were dimmer than usual, like the current itself was tired. I started the closure procedure, manually locking shaft doors, disabling trip lines, collecting personal effects. That's when I found it, a half-burned file tucked behind the power panel. Pages still smoldering. I yanked them out, fingers burning through the ash. A fragment remained legible. Target, Operator Echo 6. Possible compromise through ideological contamination. Risk, narrative reversal. Echo 6 was me. I was the target. Didn't move for a long time. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, deliberate. Not boots, not a threat. Someone I knew, or had known. But when I turned, there was no one there. Just the tunnel. Watching me. By 5:15, I was ordered to destroy all logs. Burn physical files. Wipe reels. Dismantle the radio equipment. I followed every instruction, except one. I kept the operator list. Just one copy, folded inside my coat pocket, with 12 names circled in blue ink. The last one? Blank. The space they had left for mine. At 5:56, a second courier arrived, same knock pattern. Carried a sealed metal case and a radio device with one channel. Pre-tuned. He handed me a box of detonators. Final sealant. I stared at him. Who sent you? Need to know. And I don't. He shrugged. You've already been read. Out. It was the phrase they used when your clearance was revoked before the operation ended. Meaning, you're still in the game, but no longer trusted to know the rules. I planted the charges, but I didn't detonate. Not yet. I needed to know. Who else had been inside? Who else had read the note with my name? And whether the tunnel was being closed or buried. It wasn't an explosion. It was worse. At 6:03, the concrete arrived. 2 unmarked trucks parked on the Western Access Road. No plates, no drivers. Just keys left in the ignition. Engine still warm. The mix was already churning. They wanted it fast. Permanent. I walked the tunnel one last time before the pour. No one else had shown up. R had vanished. So had the French liaison. No civilians scheduled. No exits lit. Just me. Just the dust. I lit a cigarette and stood at the halfway point, staring at the old chalk marks Victor used to leave. Most had faded, but one remained fresh. A single spiral, tight, endless, drawn in red. I pressed my hand to the wall beside it and felt it vibrate. Not from machinery. From breath. I'm telling you, the tunnel breathed. It exhaled like it knew. I turned off the light. Waited. And heard it muffled footsteps from the eastern shaft. Not fast. Not hurried. Just steady. Someone was coming, but I'd already locked the exits. I had the detonators in my pocket. And the mixers were pouring within the hour. I stepped back, unsure of what to do. Then the radio on my belt crackled. One word. Stop. No call sign. No voice I recognized. Just static afterward. I looked at the mouth of the tunnel. Still empty. But something told me whoever was coming wasn't coming for rescue. They were coming to witness. At 6:27, I gave the order. Not over. The radio, not on paper. I walked back up to the mixer truck and flipped the release lever myself. Cement poured like a flood, heavy and choking. It spread fast, swallowing the steel and soil, coating the memories in gray silence. I watched it crawl toward the ladder, covering every name, every trace, every noise. By 7:10, the tunnel was gone. But before the final seal, I did something I still don't understand. I tucked a matchbox into the wet concrete inside, a folded slip of paper with one line: "We're still listening." No one told me to do that. No one saw me. It just felt like someone had to know that beneath the wall, under the concrete and lies, there had been something else. Not escape, betrayal. Something we never named. Maybe it's still down there. Maybe it's still waiting. It was folded in four, tucked into the lining of my coat. I didn't notice it until hours after the tunnel was sealed. Not a coincidence. Someone had slipped it into my pocket during the closure. Maybe while I was talking to the mixer crew. Maybe while I stood still for too long, watching the gray flood swallow the past. I opened it with the kind of hesitation usually reserved for death notices. 2 lines, handwritten in firm black ink. Sector 5A, Tunnel Delta. Activir 2211. And beneath that, in English, Cody name, Wren. My Cody name. I stared at it, hoping it was a joke. An old handler playing games. But there was something in the weight of the ink, the way the R curved familiar, personal, intimate, even. No signature, no context. Just coordinates. And me. Checked the map. Sector 5A was off-grid. A dead zone near the spree, long buried under administrative denial. No tunnel operations had ever been authorized there. At least not by us. I showed the note to no one. Not even R, if he was still somewhere in the chain. Instead, I followed protocol. Traced the paper's fibers under UV. Checked for Soviet ink, Western print, any mark that could place it. Nothing. Blank as a grave. I went back to the safe house, opened the old terminal, and entered Wren into the restricted log. No match. Then, 5 seconds later, the screen blinked once. A single folder appeared, titled Echo Wren. I opened it. Dozens of logs, transcripts, intercepts, all redacted. But one stood out. An old field report from Vienna, dated 3 years prior. Written in code, but I recognized the phrasing. It was mine. My style, my cadence. But I never filed that report. I'd never been to Vienna in '59. And yet, here it was, filed under my name. With my signature, I sat there, heart frozen, as the screen flickered again and disappeared. Folder gone. System locked. Had I been part of this longer than I thought? Or had someone forged the entire trail? To make me think I had, the next morning, a package arrived by regular post. Plain wrapping. No return address. Inside, a torn fragment of a tunnel map. Different lines. Not ours, but drawn with the same chalk Victor used. At the corner. A single word etched faintly. Wren. I stood there for a long time, holding the paper like it might answer something. But it DIDN, single quotes T. And for the first time since the wall went up, I felt the cold crawl, and not from outside, but from within. I still walk past it sometimes, the old tunnel site. Just another wall, now blank, sealed, unremarkable. They paved over the hatch, planted trees around it. There's even a plaque nearby, commemorating unity. No mention of what was buried beneath. People walk their dogs there. Kids ride bikes. No one feels it, but I do. Some nights, when the wind is low and the city holds its breath, I stop. I listen. It's not a sound you'd hear unless you knew what to wait for. Not a groan, not a creak, just a faint drip in rhythm. Deep below the ground, like the tunnel's still alive. Or mourning. I once brought a microphone, left it planted under the soil for 24 hours. When I played it back, I didn't hear water. I heard movement. Not rats. Not pipes. Footsteps. Slow. measured, like someone walking with purpose, but with nowhere left to go. Maybe it's just echo, memory bouncing off brick, or maybe someone never made it out, or never wanted to. Sometimes I wonder if WREN, whoever he was, whoever I was supposed to be, still has work to finish. A few months ago, I received a letter. No return address. Just a scrap of paper. Not all walls are solid. And taped to it, a matchbox. Same kind I buried in the cement that morning. Same handwriting inside, but the message was different this time. We're still digging. I don't visit the wall anymore, but sometimes late at night, I'll catch the scent of wet earth in places it doesn't belong, in my hallway, on a train, in the folds of a coat I haven't worn in years. And I know the tunnel's not gone. Not really. Just deeper now, covered in silence thick enough to choke on. Some days, I wonder if I sealed myself in that morning. If everything since has been echoes, loops. There's a room in my building I don't remember ever entering, but its light flickers at 2:41 every night. And last week, taped to my door, a spiral, red chalk, still fresh. They say Berlin is united now. Maybe that's true above ground. But underneath, things still shift, still wait, still dig.